I had an interesting day at the beach last weekend that will be featured in this video, but before I get started with that, a quick update about an issue mentioned in my last video. I showed a problem with the primary drive shaft spinning inside of its support bearing in the CVT cover and making a noise. I quickly shimmed it, but that wasn't a good solution. I installed a 6001 ZZ bearing to replace the 638 ZZ bearing in the cover. It's the same outside diameter and a similar thickness, but it has a 12mm inside diameter instead of 8mm like the stock part. Then I made a bushing out of 6061 aluminum that fits snug on the shaft as well as in the bearing. It's worked out well so far, eliminating noise because of the tighter fit and hopefully improving support for the drive shaft as well, while still letting me remove or install the cover pretty easily. Getting sidetracked a little more, some have mentioned that they don't really know much about the scooter in these recent updates, so let me get those viewers up to speed. This is what I call T2. It's a 2004 Vento Triton, my second Triton, which is why I call it T2, and you could probably guess that I call the first one T1. I bought it about 10 years ago on eBay for $62 and some change in rough shape. I got lucky on that deal when I found out that it had a stock 90cc engine instead of the typical 49cc two-stroke. It's been through many engines from 49cc to 110cc since, but this was my very first 90cc that got me hooked on them. The current engine is a 103cc two-stroke. It's a 1E40 QMB, like the one that most of the CVT-driven two-stroke Chinese scooters have, that has been clearanced, big bored, and stroked to end up at more than double the displacement that it originally had. It's a no-frills build, a Taiwan-made cylinder and crank, with necessary adjustments to get port timing, squish, and compression within reasonable specs for a good street stroker. It's no racing engine by far, but this type of setup does have a lot of grunt and doesn't need to rev very high. I don't usually see much more than 9,000 RPM with mild durations and a Fond Gear street exhaust. The scooter itself was restored with all new panels right after I bought it. Then I thought it was a good idea to make a solid motor mount, and that vibrated the panels to death in short order. Having no desire to buy another batch of plastics, I went back to a stock motor mount and stripped the scooter down. Anything not needed was cut from the frame. I added 2 sets of foot pegs that are lower than the floorboard was for increased comfort. It's got aftermarket handlebars, and I made a frame brace to stiffen it up so it's more solid and no longer feels like it's trying to fold when the brakes are applied hard. All of the lights are LED now, aside from one of its 2 headlights. I modified a stock gas tank to hold 2 gallons instead of 1.4 so I can make less stops on long rides. It's ugly as hell, but it's my favorite scooter. I can't even tell you how many miles the frame would have on it at this point, but it's in excess of 50,000 miles for sure. Alright, so now that we're caught up with that, we can finally move on to the beach. I felt like taking a ride at least a few hours long. If you haven't figured it out from my past vids, one of my favorite places to ride around is the beach, so that's where I headed. I cruised down around 50 miles per hour, and everything was pretty uneventful. I had a man ask me a couple of silly questions at a gas station while the cam was off, like is it hot riding today? Well, it's near 100 and humid, and I'm wearing all black gear, so no, it's like riding around in a refrigerator. I got near the beach and was very glad I took the small scooter and not the T-Max. Some of my family and friends seem to think that the big scooter is for rides like these, but small scooters can roll right past the big bikes that are stuck in the beach traffic. I found a few scooters at lights to try to play with throughout the day. No thanks. Okay. Yeah, I'm 70 miles from home too.
What?
I'm 70 miles from home at the moment.
Oh man, where are you going?
Preston, Maryland.
Preston?
Yeah.
No way. Wow. Good luck.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. My luck ran out when storms forecasted for the evening arrived early while I was fueling up. I didn't make it far from the gas station before I had to stop for all of the traffic trying to get out of the beach because of the rain, and the engine died at idle. It wouldn't restart quickly, so I pushed it into a parking lot and got it to fire up after numerous tries. I assumed that moisture was either causing ignition issues or getting into the airbox, but rather than sensibly going home, I decided to keep riding around and just revved a little instead of idling so it wouldn't cut out. That didn't last long because it started to bog on takeoff and I gave up and started heading back. I lost the speedometer function of the Vapor at some point, and later noticed that it said I had gone slightly faster than I normally do. Within a few miles of the main strip, I realized that my rear camera was not sealed and probably getting water splashed all over it, so I pulled over into a car wash to put it under the seat. It stalled out as soon as RPM dropped, and again didn't want to start. After checking for spark and kicking it for a while, I noticed this sign on the wall about a blow dryer with alleged 320 mph air speeds. I figured it would be able to dry the scooter off, or at very least it'd be fun to play with. Yeah, its power was terribly disappointing and not much fun, but it did let me blow some water off of electrical and other parts. The scooter still wouldn't start after drying it off. Eventually I got running again after playing with a choke and throttle and got back on the road. It still bogged when RPM was low and even broke up briefly a couple of times while cruising, but it ran okay otherwise. Then I was riding it wide open, thinking it should run cooler with the off and on rain, when the engine crackled a bit and died out. That is not good. It still felt like it had compression, but I just couldn't get it to refire. I turned the camera off while I paced around the roadside and let the engine cool down. Of course, since I shut the camera off, some Saturn with basically no exhaust left the stop sign near me, spinning tires, and then hit second gear and got squirrely. I decided then I should leave the camera on after that. Within about 30 minutes of nothing else happening, I finally got the scooter started again. Then I needed to change batteries in the GoPro so I wouldn't have to stop for a while, and while I was changing batteries, a car somewhat crashed right in front of me. Figures. I'm still mad that I didn't get it on video. A smart car was going by on the road past this stop sign when it locked up the brakes for a second. It got a little sideways, then the driver overcorrected and ended up sliding through the grass before spinning it around and ending up in the road again. The driver came back and asked if I was okay. She thought she had hit me, but I was 20 feet off of the road that she was on. I asked if she was okay and she said she just had a mini heart attack and then drove away. My guess is that she was looking down at a phone or otherwise distracted and looked up to see a person that she thought was in the roadway and panicked. Whatever the case may be, everyone was fine and I got back on my way home. I avoided full throttle for most of the trip and got back just before another heavy storm came through. You can see in some of my past videos that I keep having engine problems at wide open throttle on these long rides. Luckily I didn't put a hole in the piston this time, it just looks like it's soft seized and it doesn't appear that it was running lean. I've found possible causes in some cases of failures, but it's happened so much that I think it's just a bad idea for me to try to travel great distances at full tilt on these air-cooled setups. These small air-cooled engines were pretty much designed to go 35 miles per hour for a trip around town. They can certainly take more than that, but backing off the throttle a little and being happy with 50 to 55 mile per hour cruising instead of riding 60 miles per hour or so wide open would probably be much smarter in my case. Liquid cooling would be nice, but I'm not in love with the idea of mounting a radiator and hoses to this naked scoot. Maybe someday though. I wanted to make sure there was no moisture in the air filter, so I took it out and cleaned it in dish soap and water. Some use gasoline or special cleaners intended for air filters. Then I rinsed it in plain water before drying it in paper towels and then sticking it in front of a fan for a while. I oiled it with Maxima's Fab 1 spray-on filter oil before reinstalling it. A full 2 days after the ride, the speedometer finally started working again. I still took multiple electrical connections apart and applied dielectric grease and then electrical tape, so maybe this won't happen the next time I get rained on. Everything seems to be back to normal for T2 now, but I'll probably ride it a little less than I have been lately and give the other scooters a chance for some attention. I'm sure you'll see more of it though, and hopefully I won't kill it before the fall car shows so I can take it to those. If you've enjoyed the video, a like would be appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.